It all started the night I couldn't sleep. The kind of night where the air in your house feels too thick, where the shadows stretch too far across the walls, and your mind starts wandering to places it shouldn't. I'd been tossing and turning for hours, my thoughts racing for no reason at all. It was past midnight, and every creak of the floorboards, every groan of the house settling, sent a chill down my spine. I don't know why I felt so uneasy, but I did. I got up hoping a walk might clear my head. I live on the outskirts of town where the roads are narrow and the houses are spread thin. Beyond that, just woods. Dark, endless woods. It wasn't my first time wandering at night. In fact, I did it often when sleep evaded me. But this night felt different. There was something off. The air was colder than it should have been for early summer, and there was an odd stillness. No wind, no rustle of leaves, just silence, thick and suffocating. I didn't plan on going deep into the forest, but my feet seemed to have a mind of their own. I found myself walking past the usual spots, past the old trail I usually took, heading deeper into the woods where the trees grew dense and twisted together. My flashlight cut through the darkness, but it felt weak, as if the shadows were swallowing the light faster than I could cast it. As I ventured further, I started to feel it, a tug deep in my gut, like something was pulling me forward. I tried to shake it off, told myself it was just my imagination running wild. But that feeling of being drawn to something wouldn't let go. I don't know how long I walked before I saw it, a small clearing up ahead. The trees opened up just enough to let a sliver of moonlight pour through, illuminating a patch of earth that was different from the rest. The ground here was bare, no grass or leaves, just dirt, and something else. A grave. It was small, old, and barely noticeable, as if the forest had been trying to swallow it for decades. The stone was weathered, covered in moss, the name worn away by time. There were no flowers, no signs of anyone having visited in years. Just that cold, hard stone sticking up from the earth. I should have turned back right then. Something in my gut screamed at me to leave, to get out of that place. But I couldn't. I was frozen, staring at the grave like it was calling to me. And that's when I heard it. At first, I thought it was the wind, a soft rustling like leaves being brushed together. But there was no wind. The night was still, the trees unmoving. And the sound? It was coming from beneath the ground. A whisper. At first, it was too faint to make out. Just a soft murmur that sent a shiver up my spine. But then it grew louder. Clear. It was my name. James? I froze. My breath caught in my throat. There was no one around. The clearing was empty. The only thing here was me, and the grave. And the voice was coming from beneath the grave. My feet were rooted to the spot, my heart thundering in my chest as the whisper came again, louder this time. James? I backed away, but my legs felt like lead. I tried to convince myself it was just my mind playing tricks, that it couldn't be real. But the voice? It was so clear, so close, as if someone was buried just inches beneath the earth, speaking directly to me. And then the whisper changed. Come closer. The ground beneath the grave shifted slightly, as if something was moving under the dirt, trying to claw its way out. I turned and ran. I didn't stop running until I was out of the forest, back on the street under the street lamps, gasping for air. My heart was pounding, and every nerve in my body was screaming at me to keep going, to put as much distance between myself and that grave as possible. But even as I ran, I could still hear it. James? Come closer. Followed me all the way home. When I woke up, the morning light was already streaming through the blinds, casting thin streaks of brightness across my bed. My heart was still racing, my mind replaying the scene over and over, the grave, the whisper, my name called out from the earth. It had been so vivid, so real. But it couldn't have been. It had to be a dream, right? I sat up, trying to shake off the lingering sense of dread. My room was quiet, the soft hum of the world going on outside my window, normal and uneventful. For a moment, I let myself believe it. It was all in my head. A nightmare brought on by exhaustion and an overactive imagination. But as I stood and made my way to the bathroom, a strange feeling clung to me, like a shadow I couldn't shake. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to scrub away the remnants of the dream. But no matter how much I told myself it wasn't real, a nagging thought kept crawling back. What if it wasn't just a dream? I stared at my reflection, the water dripping from my chin. My face looked pale, the bags under my eyes darker than usual. I'd never felt this rattled by a nightmare before, and something in my gut told me that this was more than just my mind playing tricks on me. I felt pulled. Like something was unfinished. Like something was waiting. Without fully understanding why, I found myself getting dressed and heading toward the door. My legs carried me out of the house before my mind could even make sense of it. The sun was bright, but it didn't feel warm. The air was crisp, almost biting. It was too quiet for a Saturday morning, and the familiar hum of life outside seemed muffled, distant. Before I knew it, I was at the edge of the woods again, standing at the place where I had started my walk the night before. My heart pounded in my chest. Everything in me screamed to turn back, but that pull, it was stronger now. It felt like invisible hands were guiding me, urging me to return to the place I had seen in my dream. I stepped into the forest. The trees seemed denser this time, their branches hanging low, casting deep shadows across the path. The silence was thick, like a blanket that smothered every sound. I walked for what felt like hours, my feet carrying me deeper and deeper, further than I had ever gone before. And then I found it, the clearing. It was exactly as I had seen it, small, isolated, with that same sliver of pale light filtering through the trees. The grave sat at the center, just as weathered and forgotten as I remembered. But this time I was wide awake. This time there was no dream to blame. The grave was real and I was standing right in front of it. My breath came shallow as I stepped closer, my boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. I stared at the gravestone, its moss-covered surface, the name long eroded away. My pulse quickened, and for a moment I thought I was going to turn and run again. But then the whisper came. "James?" I froze. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't a dream. The voice was real. That same low, soft murmur, curling out from beneath the earth, rising from the grave. My name. It was calling me just like before. "James? Come closer." I tried to move, tried to take a step back to get away, but I couldn't. My feet were rooted to the spot. It was like my body was no longer my own, like the ground beneath me had turned to stone, trapping me in place. The air grew colder, the temperature dropping so fast I could see my breath hanging in front of me. The forest seemed to darken, the trees twisting in on themselves, their branches curling like claws overhead. I felt a pressure building around me like the whole world was holding its breath. And then I felt it. A presence. Behind me. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see what was there, but my body betrayed me. Slowly, against every instinct screaming in my head turned. There, standing just behind me in the shadows, was me, or something that looked like me. The figure was identical to me down to the last detail, the same face, the same clothes I was wearing. But it wasn't right. Its eyes were dark, hollow, like pits of endless blackness. And its skin, it was pale, sickly, like it had been drained of all life. The thing smiled at me, its lips curling in a grotesque imitation of human expression. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. My throat was locked, my muscles stiff as the ghostly figure stepped closer, its movements slow and deliberate, like it was savoring every second. "No one sees you anymore, James," it whispered, the voice crawling up my spine, wrapping itself around my brain. "No one ever will." My heart pounded in my ears, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. I wanted to run, to tear myself away from whatever this thing was, but I couldn't move. I was trapped, pinned in place by that terrible, invisible force. And then, slowly, the figure lifted its hand, reaching toward me. I could feel the cold radiating off it, like the very air around me was freezing in its presence. The closer it got, the more I felt myself slipping, fading, like the world was losing focus, like I was being erased. "You're not real anymore," it whispered, its mouth inches from my ear now. "You belong to the grave now, James. No one can see you. No one will miss you." I blinked, and suddenly the world around me shifted. I was back on the street near my house. The sun was bright, people were walking by, but something was wrong. They didn't see me. It was like I was invisible, like I wasn't even there. I waved my hands, shouted, tried to get their attention, but nothing. They walked right past me, their faces blank, their eyes glazed over. I turned back toward the forest, my heart pounding in my chest, the whispering still echoing in my ears. That thing, that ghost of myself, it was still behind me, smiling. And then everything went black.